In this video, we are going to talk more about how to create a predictable classroom environment, which is very important for students who have experienced trauma. So you want to create a structure and a predictable routine. This can include relational rituals, again, rituals that allow communication and interaction between you and the students and between the students themselves so that we are creating connections. Again, we can mirror the child's energy level and then be aware of how we're reacting to the child and making sure that we are controlling our reactions. So some examples of relational rituals might be a bug and a wish, where everyone shares something that bugs them and something that they wish for. Or it might be a reflection on the day with a high and a low. So what was the highest moment of your day and what was something that was a low point that was more challenging? You want to make sure that we're being present with our students. So again, we are collaborating with them, that we are creating a space where they feel seen and they feel heard. We want to set clear expectations and clear limits, but we also want to have logical consequences. So not necessarily punitive consequences, but consequences that make sense based on what the infraction was. You want to take the opportunity to incorporate student strengths in any way that you can, but also making sure that you are providing positive reinforcement often. So that can be something as simple as verbal praise, or it can be other rewards and systems that you have in place within your classroom, but making sure that that positive reinforcement is consistently available and consistently given to your students. Another way to create predictability is to build in choice, which again gives the child a sense of control. So choice can be where to sit, it can be what writing instrument to use, it can be what part of the task to start first, it can be who they want to work with. By building in that choice in ways that work for you as well, you are providing that child with a sense of control that they may not otherwise have. When you do have to redirect a child, make sure that you are redirecting with acceptable alternatives. So we don't want to force a specific alternative, and we don't want to be coercive. We want to provide options that are acceptable and that are going to meet that child's need. Part of predictability is our relationships. So we are building connections with children, and we become a predictable person and a predictable presence in their life. That creates a sense of safety for them that, again, allows them to feel comfortable making mistakes and to take risks. We want to notice signs of distress, and this includes what we would call precursor behaviors. So precursor behaviors are often lower level or milder behaviors that typically are followed by the more maladaptive and concerning behaviors. And so when you really get to know your kids and your students, you'll start to know that for one particular child, for example, if they start to whine, that's a precursor behavior for them that if it is not intervened on, it may escalate to screaming or throwing things. So when you recognize those precursor behaviors in your students, then you're able to intervene quicker and potentially reduce or eliminate that behavior escalating. You also want to take opportunities to co-regulate with your students. Again, when a child is dealing with a trauma response, there are certain parts of the brain that are offline, shut down, and that child is in a completely emotional state, and they may not be able to access their learned strategies. So in those moments when a child is dysregulated, we can co-regulate with them. So that might look like standing in front of the child and taking slow, deep breaths and looking right into their eyes so that they then start to take those deep breaths with you. That might mean applying deep pressure to a child that you have that comfort and level of relationship with. Maybe it's just squeezing their shoulders or even holding their hand, depending on what they need. It's also important to try to build in regulation into their day. So opportunities where they have a moment to kind of downregulate after you do an activity that's really exciting or takes a lot of movement, as well as just basic breathing and calming activities incorporated throughout the day. With students who have experienced trauma, especially when they are in that triggered state, we want to provide information in digestible amounts. So you're giving smaller bites. We're reducing the verbal language that we're using and providing instructions and directions that are short and concise and easily accessible for those students. You want to encourage students to ask questions. Create a culture where asking questions or asking for help is good so that students feel safe to do that. Normalize making mistakes and even celebrate those mistakes. Celebrate when they take risks and provide them, again, a culture and an environment that allows them to feel safe in doing those things. As we talked about in the previous video, scaling can be a really powerful tool, and that can even help to build self-awareness. So you can even use scaling questions when you're asking them if they understood the directions. So you can ask them to give you a 1, a 2, or a 3 based on how clear they felt the directions were. So for children who have experienced trauma, being aware of them feeling trapped can be a significant factor for some of them. So that may mean seating a student by a door rather than having them sit in the back where they can't get to the door or have to walk around several desks in order to get out of the room. Something else that may impact their ability to focus and learn, so something to be aware of for some students. Predictability is key. So creating an environment that is stable, that is predictable, will create safety and a sense of calm for your students. When we create these predictable environments, we allow the child to kind of sink into the environment and not feel like they have to be on high alert all the time. And when they're able to do that, they're able to actually access their learning and to be a part of the learning environment. In our next video, we will talk a little bit more about how we can create positive classroom management systems in order to support positive behaviors.